Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. It's been quite a period, particularly from the previous conferences up till now. The Edutech conference, I'm sure something that we probably all familiar with. I was quite, immersed in the previous sessions. So my name is Olasukomi Adenuga, and I'll be moderating this session. So the previous session was looking at adaptive learning and the future of education, and I'm sure that lays a wonderful foundation for us to look into the future of work. And in this session, we'll be looking at the emerging skills and the future of work. I'm sure it will be a very, very interesting conversation. We've got an array of highly experienced speakers. And I'd just like to introduce the panel. Diverse, I'd say, from different educational spheres, but I'm sure they also bring in a wealth of experience that would enrich the conversations, and the ideas they'll be ventilating, I'm sure, will be something a lot of people will take value out of. So first, I'd like to introduce Ms. Oduola Yinka Oshuloye. She's the Director of Marketing and Innovation at Junior Achievement Nigeria. Welcome. Just acknowledge. And secondly, joining us is Mr. John Toscano. He is the Principal and Chief Operating Officer of Olashere International School in Iloko, Ijesha. You're welcome. And last, but definitely by no means least, is Dr. Mayowa Agbola. He's the Deputy Director, Research and Development at Covenant University, Ota, Ogun State. So welcome, Dr. Agbola. So thank you all very much for being here. Apologies once again that we're running slightly a wee bit behind schedule, but I'm sure that the immersion in the conversations will kind of make up the time. So for some background and context, what we would really appreciate is that it's no longer news. That there's a new era upon us, and over the past few years, the business landscape, education landscape has been experiencing an increase in complexity, and a lot of people really have been striving to survive. Sadly, 2020, of course, threw its own curve, and the coronavirus pandemic itself is what a lot of countries and individuals are still battling with, and it's impacting all of us in different dimensions. The educational environment and organization these days are faced with unprecedented change, as well as creating new opportunities. And of course, these disruptions are impacting the future of work. If we're looking at some of these drivers that are impacting the future of work, we're looking at, there's been an increase in technology adoption. And that's one of the things that was alluded to in the previous panel discussion. We're seeing a data boom. A lot of organizations and institutions and people are beginning to leverage data. There's also an increase in job vulnerability due to automation. With technology comes automation, and a lot of jobs become much more vulnerable as a result. We're living in a distance economy now, so you also see the explosion of the gig economy. And of course, there's diversity in the workplace. Careers are also changing because with the disruptions that have happened, people are beginning to learn new skills. They're going into new opportunity, and then the workspace is really changing. In addition to the current disruptions, I think if we also look at this pandemic-induced lockdown and the economic contractions that have happened, technology adoption by companies obviously is going to transform tasks, is going to transform jobs, and by extension, the demand on skills that are required for the future. So it is safe to say that we are in a new world, and of course, the skill demands are going to be rather different going in the future. So having this brief summary, I'd like to give each one of our speakers just about 2 minutes to look at this impending future of work, and from where you sit, how do you think you are contributing to that, and what measures, what steps do you think you have implemented to be properly and well positioned, first as an organization, and then we'll begin to look at it more specifically. I think we can start with Oduola. How do you think this impacts you? How do you think this impacts youth? And how do you think this impacts placement of youth in jobs?
Okay. I'll ask it for me. Can you hear me well?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So for us at Junior Achievement, we believe that the future of work offers unparalleled opportunities. Like you rightly said, the job market, technology and new markets has unbundled certain tasks and certain jobs. So no longer would you find one person being needed to perform a certain task. We have more of a global assembly line, you can call it nowadays. So at Junior Achievement, we've been working with our schools to include more financial literacy, digital literacy, work readiness, and entrepreneurship skills into the curriculum. We've partnered with the Lagos State government to ensure that all schools around, all the schools in Lagos are running our company program, which is an entrepreneurship program that runs for 20 weeks and prepares young students to run their own businesses. And COVID really just, changed the game in terms of how delivered. So no longer are students thinking of physical trade in terms of businesses, but now they're thinking more digital. So now you're looking at creating more digital entrepreneurs. During the pandemic, we celebrated hitting our 1 million student target, and it took us 20 years to reach that. But in the past, past couple months, as we've been deliberating about the future of Junior Achievement, we're looking to raise 1 million digital entrepreneurs, and we believe it's possible thanks to technology and the advance of digital literacy and digital skills in the workplace. So we're excited to take advantage of the opportunities that technology is offering us, and how technology has forced Nigeria and a lot of developing countries to embrace the new normal in education and the future of work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Oduola. A very nice summation of that. I was quite excited when I heard you say, right now what we have globally is a global assembly line, where you're looking at a production line, really, it's global. Previously, you will have localized resources, localized skills, but with the disruptions we've experienced, as well as technology, now the assembly line and production line really for skills is really global, where people are sat in a particular location and then you can access skills and resources from the entire globe. But thank you very much for that. I'd like to go now to Mr. Toscano, and looking at that from the context, kind of like segueing from looking at a global assembly line, looking at it from the perspective of a post-primary institution where you're preparing students to go into higher education and college and universities, and seeing how the curriculum that is being adopted by schools now, and how that really kind of like connects to the future of work, and what steps as an institution you are taking as well.
Yes, thank you. I mean, the question I always ask is our current system of education meeting its needs in terms of the production line? Are we equipping students with the skills that they're going to need in their future employment? Unfortunately, at the moment, to a large extent, the answer is no. But let me look at what we're actually trying to do about that. I think the problem stems from the fact that we still have a curriculum, an assessment system that is it's antiquated. So what we're seeing is a world of work where there are all kinds of new challenges, new skill requirements, and where everything's changing very quickly. And we have an educational system where we're still using a method of assessment, written exams, which hasn't changed fundamentally, I would say, in around about 100 years. So what are we doing about it? Well, at Olashuri, we've been trying to develop a program that's based on core skills. And we've identified key core skills: critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication, and a very important one, of course, digital literacy. So although we're still following a conventional curriculum, we're trying to build our teaching and learning around the development of these core skills. Now, perhaps the most crucial of these core skills is the digital literacy. What we've done is we've introduced iPads for our school. Now, I'm quite aware that not every school is in a position to do that. And perhaps a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are ideals rather than what is realizable for everybody at the moment. But now, almost 80% of our students have personal iPads, which they take to lesson, and they use it as a tool to support learning, just as they use a pencil or a ruler. And by building that digital literacy into their, in a sense, we're preparing them for what they'll do in work, because I think most of us are learning to work with a mobile device of some kind or a digital device of some kind alongside us. Now, in terms of the other core skills, if you were to come into a typical lesson in our school, you wouldn't see a teacher standing at the front of the class talking to students. You would probably see the students sitting working in groups so that they can develop their collaboration and communication skills. Or they'd be working on a task which enables them to develop their critical thinking and creativity. And also the skill acquisition goes a long way beyond the boundaries of the academic program. There are a lot of activities that go on in a school that are about more than just building up the student's CV. So whether we're talking about music, drama, debating, sports, public speaking, it's about building students into well-rounded individuals who are going to be able to cope with different challenges that they will meet when they get into their future careers. And I think overall, what I would say is just moving away from this antiquated examination system and finding a much more meaningful way to assess students is going to be an enormous challenge that's going to face all educators across the world. But it's something we can't ignore. What we need to move towards is giving our children the skills that they will need in the 21st century workplace. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Toscano. Interesting summation there. And I think this is largely a challenge that is faced at every level. You talked about, working with dated curriculum. I mean, if you have dated curriculum and assessment systems, that in itself is not preparing and really testing the students to see that the skills they require for the future are actually being assessed. If we're looking at the concept of sort of like application-focused learning, where you can actually see the students themselves working in groups, and then they're able to build those core skills that, like the WAF has said, are the core skills required for the future. If that is absent currently in curriculum, I think really, how well are we preparing students for the world of work? But I'd like to just, layering on that, I'll go to Dr. Agbola, where we look at, now, Mr. Toscano has painted a scenario, and he's looking at it from a secondary level where there is that gap, and how they, as an institution, have been able to adopt and use technology to try to rapidly accelerate their students to acquiring the skills of the future. Now, looking at that from a tertiary level, how have you in your position, are working with a tertiary institution, and probably within your own space, how have you been able to connect or use technology to drive the learning and adoption of skills? And if you have a production line, which is the secondary schools, that's really not equipping the students adequately, how are you dealing with that at the tertiary level?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you so much for coming for that question. And for me, I count it a great privilege to be in an institution such as Covenant University. And the COVID-19 pandemic came up, and the whole world was taken by surprise. But what did we do as an institution? Was that first of all we tried to look at what we could do, because we already had a platform, that's the learning management system that we were using for our current students, for our students. So while they were on holiday, we sort of opened that up for them, and we used various tools. Apart from the learning management system, we used the Zoom, we used several tools for them. And one of the big ones that we used, the biggest one that we used, was to partner with Coursera. And what did we do? Just as John mentioned, we had issue with the curriculum, and what Coursera was able to do for us was to do a Coursera a cost match with what we have as a curriculum, and we're able to understand the skill set that our students are supposed to get in order to prepare them for the future of work. That helped us to be able to know the kind of courses that our students were supposed to take on Coursera, and we sort of assign courses for each of our students based on the courses they are doing, based on the programs they find themselves. And surprisingly, aside those courses that the students took, they also went outside to do other courses. And as I speak to you, so many of them have taken so much courses on the Coursera platform, and the level of engagement was so high that at this point we are so confident that our students are prepared for the future of work, as it were. And also, aside that, we as an institution have started to work on our distance learning center. At the moment in Nigeria, we only have 11 institutions that have they've been approved to run a distance learning center, more or less like saying open and distance learning. And Covenant University have started, and I'm privileged to even supervise that project at the moment. And so we are doing a lot to ensure that we are using the right technology for our students, and also for those who yearn for this learning, try to see how to get to the low income earners to ensure that they also are in this same pool. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Adopting new technology, e-learning, leveraging partnerships also is what I hear from you as being an avenue where you've worked successfully to ensure that your students in your school, having haven't been thrust into this disruptive era, have also been able to leverage the partnerships to ensure that you have learning going on a continuous basis. Well, thank you all initially for your initial submissions, but I'd like to drill a bit further. And going by some research, I think the World Economic Forum, for instance, says the number of jobs that will be destroyed by automation will be surpassed your jobs created. And so we're looking at, by 2025, employers are going to have increasingly redundant roles. So, and I'm driving this question towards Ojwalaika. If jobs are going to be significantly reduced, where we have probably, and the estimate is about 85 million jobs will probably be displaced, what are the strategies and frameworks or processes you're putting in place? Because you are largely, you're engaging a lot of youth, the youth demography that you have tried to equip with digital skills. How are you creating, just as you have an assembly line, global assembly line, what is your conveyor belt for putting those youth? What kind of systems do you have for putting them into jobs? Particularly the
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So that's a very interesting question, and we have to look at the entire value chain, or the entire value chain of the student's life. So you start from the primary school, from the primary level, and go all the way to the tertiary level, and even after that. And what you see is that if we don't start right from the primary level, we're going to lose them. Because, for example, in Nigeria, you can never tell when a student is a child or youth or someone is going to enter the world of work. So ideally, you expect that someone is going to go to primary school, then secondary school, university, and start working. But that's not the reality here in Nigeria. In Nigeria, you see that some only make it through primary school and start working. So we focus on equipping them with skills right from the primary school, and then we go all the way up to university and even after university. We work with a lot of partners to ensure that we take the skills that we're teaching at the after the tertiary level and break it down into simpler modules, even in just the theoretical aspects that you can assimilate right from primary school. So we're ensuring that we're equipping students, and it's a bit difficult because majority, about 75% of the schools we work with are from the low income and low income schools. So the opportunities we can have in low income schools are not the same opportunities that afford in the private schools. So we have, you've seen, especially with this pandemic, a new definition to the last mile learners. So we're working with a variety of partners to ensure that we're meeting everybody where they are. So what School A, which is a private school that has high access to technology, is able to do, is not going to be the same thing that School B, which is a mid to low level school, will be able to do as well. So we're partnering to meet them where they are. So the partners that will for the primary school in the low income area is completely different from the partners in the private school. But at the same time, we want to ensure that we're not also then creating we're educating and we're teaching different skills to the different groups of people. So in a low income school, for example, instead of running our curriculum in one language, we run it in multiple languages. But in the private school, we know that the students are fine to assimilate in just English. We would engage the gatekeepers in these communities. Again, we understand that in low-income schools, that the learning is not just what happens in the school. We have to also engage the community leaders, the different gatekeepers in those communities to ensure that the learning continues, where even if it is that the student has to go to school, leave school and go and sell or support their families by running a business or something, they understand and they have the skills to support them in whatever it is that they're doing. So it's a very it's a very long very long value chain that we're trying to address. But our key takeaway and our key approach to solving this problem is to ensure that at the different stages of the value chain, we're meeting and we're addressing the problem as they are, and we're meeting and addressing the students as they are in the ways that they can easily understand.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. I like this concept of you working. Yours is a very much more dynamic space where you're working with a diverse audience. So you're looking at different ends of the market, and a greater population you have is really at the lower end. So it's being a lot more flexible, if that's kind of thing that I'm hearing. You finding multiple ways by which you can reach and access these students, either by means of language modifications to curriculum, so you ensure that this audience is reached. I'd quickly like to take that back to, and we're trying to move very, very quickly here. For Mr. Toscano, one thing I heard consistently when you're looking at, and probably short of it being sort of like a frustration, is the curriculum and assessment systems that you have. and the inability for you to be able to use those systems to prepare the students you have for the world of work. Now, we're in the 21st century. Some of these students even are far ahead of their teachers in terms of their technological exposure. How are you bridging that gap in terms of getting even the instructors up to speed in terms of adoption of technology, and also ensuring that the students are properly well equipped? And what kind of placements do you have for them to acquire skills?
Okay, well, we've got a very comprehensive program of staff training, and I think the key thing about training is it's ongoing. It doesn't have a beginning or an end. And there are two key elements to that staff training. The first element is in the core skills, communication, collaboration, creativity. The British Council has been running a series of online courses in which all our teachers have taken part. And that's really been the support from the British Council has really been excellent in bolstering us at that end. The other aspect is the digital literacy. And what we've done is we've introduced the iPad expertise in phases. A few years ago, we were able to bring a trainer over from the UK, from a school in the UK that was using iPads, train a lot of our staff on the ground. And we still have those links, but it's very much ongoing, and it's not, for me, it's never a finished product. I think the interesting thing is that the development of the skills is running in parallel with the development of the skill in the teaching staff. And it's just something that you are always trying to improve and always trying to refine.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you're right. It's an ongoing process, and glad to hear that the support from institutions that quickly help you ramp up capabilities, particularly for teachers, because really they're quite instructive in this entire process. If I look at that relative to tertiary institutions, Dr. Akola, would you say you are getting a relative kind of support also? And clearly, I mean, I am an employer, and I see finished products from institutions, and I see the gaps that exist. Do you have systems in place where you're institutionalizing a process of internships where before students graduate, they're able to get work-ready skills that would be useful for them much more into the future? Are there partnerships you have or institutionalized systems?
Yes, thank you very much. In fact, we have lots of partnership at the moment with lots of companies. Just to mention a few, like McKinsey, PwC, a lot of them. And at the moment, we have lots of our graduates working in these organizations. So on a yearly basis, before students graduate, we have these companies coming to our institution, to advertise, vacancies, and in fact, there was a particular year I spearheaded I think Nielsen Academy. They came on ground, and they trained about 100 of our students, for their own workplace. And so we get a lot of these from time to time. And the student affairs office also get lots of job vacancies and trainings. Also, there's also a big collaboration between the university and the alumni association, which I'm also a part of, and we have lots of opportunities from the members of our alumni. They bring lots of opportunities to the university. Just last week, we announced to the final year students some opportunities that they can take advantage of. The one recent one is also from one of our alumni members who designed an algorithm for charting. She called it career mapping, for the students. So we are doing a lot for our students to ensure that by the time they graduate, they are relevant, they stay relevant, and they get the job they desire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Agbola. I think it's really interesting, and and thank you very much all for the statements that you have made and the remarks. I think this is a conversation we could have for hours, because it's something that is relatively of concern, particularly to everyone within the education ecosystem. Before we move to our closing statements, I'd like to take a couple of questions that have come in. One of the questions that I have here is asking, really, if there's a viable market for robotics and the knowledge of 3D printing technology in Nigeria for the next 10 years, and if there's a university taking such course. So the question, in summary, is looking at there's a viable market for robotics and the knowledge of 3D technology. So if anyone were going to study robotics, would you say there's a market for it? So I think I'll be probably posing that to Dr. Agbola. You are in university system. Yeah. You probably have more engagement with the market. And I'm happy for any Mr. Toscano to contribute to that. Would you say there's a viable market?
Yes, at the moment, I would say there's a viable market because I've seen a number of organizations trying to bring in the latest technologies when you talk about unmanned area vehicles. Some few months ago, we had the Nigerian Air Force coming to Covenant University to partner with some researchers regarding robotics and the rest of them. Though we don't have a course on robotics, but we have something close to mechatronics and the rest of them. And I think there's a viable market for it, because even with the way things are turning out currently, it shows that there's a need for that aspect, you know. And a lot is being done at the moment to see how we can get the best hands that will come to the university to teach such courses, because even at the moment in the country we don't really have those expertise yet. But there's this need already arising from the market that, okay, we will need students who will be able to write programming, because it's not just about robotics, it's not just the mechanical thing that you see. It has to do with programming, it has to do with a lot. And lots of our students are doing a lot currently in terms of the algorithms, the programming, the coding, and all that.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know, Mr. Toscano, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question because it illustrates a wider point. I mean, specifically on robotics, we've had a robotics club running in the school for a couple of years. And we've actually got a plan to introduce a robotics lab. It's in our school development plan. I'm not sure when that will happen. But the wider point is that there are developments in the world around us that are going on, and they're important, and they're not quick enough in terms of finding their way into the school curriculum. Yeah, I mean, robotics is perhaps something that we should be exploring more in computer teaching or in physics. But what we find is that the curriculum is so slow to adapt, and I think, again, it's for all of us who are educators to push the exam boards and push the organizations we work with that do assessment to bring these things into the curriculum and keep the curriculum up to date, rather than teaching things. You know, I teach things now to students that I was taught at school. And I think really the time for those things has passed. So let's get the robotics in.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And for as educationists and people in learning, I'm sure that's a frustration we all face. Even at executive level, teaching people in corporate space, you find that there's a bit of a shift moving away from the old days of case learning that everyone has acquired. They teach you everything, so just in case you need it, to really just in time, you need now. Things you will need for the future. So that adaptability of a curriculum to the current realities is critical. The next question is looking at synergies, and institutions really cannot work in isolation of corporate organizations. So whilst a lot of educators have been driving a lot of advocacy, and for as long as I can remember, there has been, at least in country, a lot of advocacy done at most senior levels to try to adjust and amend the curriculum. But I think a lot of corporate organizations really also need to come into this space to invest in all this kind of new learning. So for instance, if Olashore is trying to set up a robotics lab, and knowing fully well that that is a skill required for the future, a corporate organization could come and fund that to help those young students develop the skills. What kind of synergy exists between institutions and the corporate organizations to develop a more functional curriculum? So that's what I'm summarized the second question. And I'm throwing this open to all three panelists. So we'll go first with Mr. Toscano, because I kind of linked that to something happening at yours.
I think it's an area where there's tremendous scope. In a sense, as an institution, I think that it's something that we've underutilized. But yes, I mean, I think if we look at schools across the country, funding is an issue everywhere, whatever level you're at, and I think. I'm talking about educators needing to drive a change, but I also think the change can come in the other direction. And I think that if employers see a need, they can also take the initiative and go to schools and educational institutions and say, look, this is what we need, and we can help you to get it if we can get into partnership. So I think it's a great way forward, yes.
Okay. Brilliant. Oduolayinka, any thoughts on that? What kind of synergies do you have? Although you are largely, I'll say you're an NGO, but how do you work with corporates to achieve this?
I completely agree with everything John has said. We need to see more collaboration hand in hand with the private sector and with the schools, where the private sector also takes responsibility in a sense for their future, because these are the people they're going to employ. So what sorts of investments are they making into the curriculum in terms of, are they running R&D departments straight out of the school and not building standalone R&D departments? But how are they working with the school to integrate that practical aspect of learning for the students so that they can carry along the students all through the process? Are you having systems where students can have internships within your course? It's an internship in a company, where you're doing this hands-on learning with the company, where there's this handshake between the organizations, so the businesses. So what do you have, for example, can we say, what sorts of collaborations or partnerships do they have with the Department of Pharmacy, with the School of Pharmacy? How are they working with the students and the schools to introduce challenges where they're pushing the students to change the way they're thinking about solving problems? How are we seeing that in the auto manufacturing industry and different industries around the country? It's a very good question. It's an interesting way to look at it, like John said, where as opposed to the educators pushing for change in that area, but let's also see the private sector also push for change as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So lastly, as a wrap up in 1 minute, Dr. Bola, what's your take? What kind of partnership, what kind of synergy exists, and how are you leveraging that as a tertiary institution to strengthen your curriculum?
Yes, thank you so much. Currently, we run a seminar series which translates into the internships that our students benefit on, and we call it Town and Gown Seminar Series. Each department, each program sort of look for a company or an organization that is related to that department or that does something around that department, and they bring somebody, a representative from that department, to come lecture or teach the students what is expected of them, and teach them maybe if, for example, they are to take a career path in that particular in that organization. So we do that on a semester basis, and you can imagine to the entire institution. If all departments and all programs is holding such seminar series independently, at the end of the day, students kind of go home with the mindset of what is expected of them from those organizations, if at all they're interested. So if for a student, an average student that is supposed to spend 4 years in the institution would have had an experience with probably around 8 organizations. And by the time he or she is graduating, he or she already knows what to do and which organization he or she is going to select to do his internship and things like that. So these are kind of partnerships we engage ourselves in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone, for the responses. To close, and I think it's been a very interesting conversation. I would have loved for us to go on, but we're quite constrained with time. I'd like to have a 1-minute closing statement from each person, and putting yourself in a situation or in a position where you probably were in a position to influence policy as it relates to future skills and how we prepare, but in each of our individual spheres for the future. The future of work that we really talk about is no longer the future, it's already here. And if you were in a position to influence policy and advocate for something, what would be something you would take forward and really want to drive and ensure that it's done? So let's take it with the lady first, please.
Thank you very much.
So, Odolaika.
Yes, thank you. So for me and for us at Junior Achievement, we really the first thing that we need to change. The future is here, but then there's also going to be another future to come. So how are we equipping, the youth of today with the right skills that they need to compete in this global economy and in this global market? You see, long are the days where you have to be physically present in an office. So I can be here in Nigeria working for a company or working for a company in Argentina. There's no longer that barrier of distance anymore. So we need to ensure that we're supporting the youth to, one, reskill, upskill, and maintain the skills that they currently have. And not just the youth, also the teachers. What kind of trainings are we making available to the teachers and the educators to ensure that they also stay competitive? Because the way of learning has changed. No longer is it what is demand and what is supply. How are you asking questions that show the understanding of concepts as opposed to the of these concepts? So we have a long way to go, but it's very possible for us to compete on this global in this global digital market that we've seen ourselves in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Toscano?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of changing the curriculum, I think I've already made my position very clear, and I think that's the responsibility we all have. But I think part of the reason that things don't change is because of the resistance in the minds of so many people. I think a very big part of this is education, not education of the students, but education of their parents and the working community, and getting, and particularly from my point of view, getting parents to understand that just getting marks and exam scores is not the only thing that matters for their children's education. And that education is a much bigger process than that, and a much wider process. And sometimes some of the things that we do in education don't have a direct benefit. They won't necessarily secure a university place or get a higher mark in the end of term exam. But in the longer term, they're for the benefit of the child. And that we need to get away from this obsession with pure academic achievement and look at the wider development of children.
Thank you very much for that. I like that. I mean, that obsession, we need to find a way to move away from that. So, Dr. Abdullah, lastly, but not to close.
All right, thank you very much. I'll just take a cue from John, and that's to say, talk about the curriculum. We need to rethink it. We need to redesign it. We need to repackage it. This is the number one thing we need to work on at the moment to take our educational system forward. And aside that, we need to expand the digital infrastructure currently in order to take care of about 40 million youths of the country. At the moment, we have about maybe 1.5 or 2 million youths who have access to the university education. And thirdly, we need to optimize the public and private partnership or cooperation. You know, this will go a very long way as to move our education in this kind of time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the response, and it's been very, very insightful. The perspectives you have shared, and I'm sure there's quite a lot of learning that's been taken away from this. As educators, I'm sure there's a lot of concern we have. And what I've taken away from this session is the fact that, you know, we have all highlighted the importance of really having a relook at our curriculum and having it positioned to address now and the future, as opposed to this dated structure that we all work with. And we're looking at really also upskilling in terms of the area of technology, upskilling teachers to be able to deliver to the students, to equip them for the future. And also, I like the fact that we're looking at we need to deviate from this core focus on academic achievement and beginning to look at other skills that would make the students really employable. So all those critical skills that need to be developed that ensures that they really get into work. And lastly, it's important for there to be synergy and partnerships as well. So thank you very much, all three speakers, Ms. Oduola Inka Oshuloye, Mr. John Toscano, and Dr. Mayowa Agbola. It's been an absolute delight speaking with you all. Thank you very much. I'm sure there's a lot more you would like to share, and hopefully in other fora, you'll be able to espouse some other ideas. So thank you very much, and thank you to the organizers. It's been a delight speaking to you. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lastly, we'd also like to thank our sponsors, the main sponsors, Stanbic IBTC, as well as all the exhibitors that have exhibited at this conference. Thank you. So I'll hand over now to Shola, who will take it forward from here. So brilliant. Thank you all, and bye.
Yeah, thank you very much, Olasunkami Adenuga. No doubt. Thank you so much, Olasunkami. No doubt, it has been an exciting day for everyone. And for us, in School Media and EduFest, we are passionate in changing the face of education as it has been designed for the 21st century. And it will interest you to know that the past 2 months, we have trained over 1,000 teachers in the federal unity colleges, and they are all satisfied with Microsoft Innovative Educator. And the first quarter of next year, we are set to triple that number. On behalf of the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce and the EduFest Nigeria Limited, we appreciate Ms. Adetola Salau, that is Senior Special Advisor of Lagos to Lagos State Governor, and all speakers that will not be mentioning one by one, all the moderators. They have done a great job today. We'd like to also appreciate our premium sponsor, Stanbic IBTC Bank, exhibitors, all our attendees. I would like us to clap for all our students in the 6 geopolitical zones. All our students at the Student Technological Experience Centers, they were all hooked to this program. I have to just clap for all of them. It's a great one. And we thank the management of MBCC and EduFest, especially of course, the backstage team. They have done a humongous job. More grace to your heaven. May God spare our lives to do it again, 2021. We are contributing our quota to the development of education in Nigeria and in Africa. So I thank everyone for hooking on. Thank everyone for all your contributions, all the meetings. May God bless you. Have a great day. Thank you.